Thank you very much. Thank you for being here today. It's really nice to see such a great crowd. In the earlier video that we had, they talked about words to never use in a TED talk. And one of those words was war. So here I am to talk about war. I'm not talking about the kind of war that so often we think about and see. I'm not talking about Saving Private Ryan on the screen. I'm not talking about Apocalypse Now. I'm not even talking about American Sniper that many of us have seen in the past few weeks. I'm talking about this. I'm talking about soldiers who come home like this. I'm talking about the families that are affected by this kind of thing. When you think about war in America, since World War I, some 20 million men and women have served in the armed forces of the United States. Some 688,000 have returned like this, or not returned at all. So, what if we thought of war not in terms of television, the screen, or video games, but we thought about war in terms of the families that are required to receive this kind of a person coming home from their family? I'm going to talk about a place that's some 9,000 miles away from Texas, a place called Vietnam, the Central Highlands of Vietnam particularly, many, many years ago. And if you can look at the screen here, this is me, skinny me. And this is my very best friend, Ed. That picture shows a team of men and women whose job it was to advise the local people, the Jurai and the Banar tribes, and some Vietnamese, on how to defend themselves in the villages that they lived in. This particular place is Phu Nhan, and this was our team. There were many of us that had a lot of different kinds of jobs. There was this guy. That's me. Very young, 24, 25 years old. And there was this guy. His name is Ed. He's my very best friend. Ed and I couldn't have been any different. Ed was what we call a lifer. He had been in the Army 21 years when he got to Vietnam. I had been in the Army 1.5 years when I got to Vietnam. I couldn't wait long enough to get out of the Army. Ed, on the other hand, had spent his entire life and career there. We talked a lot about our families. Ed had 5 children, 4 girls and a boy. I had 1 child, 15 months old. My son had been born right before I left to Vietnam. One night in March 15th to be exact, Ed and I had a long discussion about our families and what we hoped for them when this terrible war was over. Oh, we couldn't wait to get back to our children. In my case, I wanted to watch my son grow up to be the kind of man that I hoped he would be. In Ed's case, he had 4 girls, ages from 16 down to 15 months, and he had a 9-year-old boy. My son was 15 months, and I said, someday maybe your son Ed and my son Alex will have a chance to meet each other. That was my hope. 2 hours later, Ed was dead. I was the last person to speak to Ed. That night, we were overrun by a unit of North Vietnamese soldiers and Viet Cong. By the end of the night, and in the ensuing day, 375 people had been killed, including my friend, Ed. It was our job in this kind of an enemy contact to go to our fighting bunkers. I did that, and Ed went with me because he was my best friend. Realizing that that was not what Ed was supposed to do because he was an intelligence non-commissioned officer, and in some ways, his life was more valuable than mine and the others. His job was to go to the center of the compound and to stay alive while the rest of us fought through the firefight. Ed didn't want to leave where he was with me. However, we forced him to leave. A sapper came through the wires, put a dynamite charge in front of Ed's bunker, and a rock came into the bunker when the dynamite exploded and hit him right between the eyes, killing him, we think, instantly. With as much reverence as you can possibly have, we put Ed's body on a medevac helicopter. That was the last time that I saw Ed. 1982, the wall went up in Washington, D.C. I went to the wall almost every year, and on panel 4W, 4 West, line 53, is Ed's name. But I tried for 40-some years to find Ed's family with no luck whatsoever. If you can imagine this, 4 months ago, around Thanksgiving, I get an email. I get an email from someone named Ed. I'm going to read you exactly what the email said because it meant so much. I was 9 when Dad was killed. Although I have memories, they are few. I would love to talk with you about Dad, his likes, dislikes, his personality, and his passion for serving in Vietnam. I was dumbfounded. So you can't answer those kinds of questions in email. So we set up a FaceTime. And I was able to meet the son, that at this time, a 51-year-old, 9-year-old boy. We talked about so many things. Wanted to know what kind of music Dad liked. I told him, I said, you know, the song I remember the most was Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Waters. That song was one that Ed and I sang together, and we sang it with our interpreters. We tried to help them with their language skills. We did all of those kinds of things. Well, did Dad ever laugh? I said, oh, did he laugh? Could he laugh? I said, I don't remember him ever not laughing. And I told the story about one night I was on radio commo duty, and I get this call. One of our NCOs had gone to the Air Force Base that night before, to play poker, to gamble, and to hopefully bring back some good things from the Air Force. The Air Force always ate a lot better than the guys in the Army, so we always wanted to get good stuff from them. So I remember I hear on the radio, Tango, Tango, this is Alpha, Alpha, we're being ambushed on Highway 14. So I ran over to where we eat breakfast, and Ed was in there, and everybody's eating breakfast, and I said, one of our NCOs has been ambushed on the highway. We need to get in there and take care of him. And nobody even moved. And all of a sudden, Ed said, hey, man, he's got steaks and beer. Let's go save him. So that's what we did. We went and helped. But Ed had a very serious side, too. Because of his responsibilities in the intelligence corps, it was his responsibility to make sure that intelligence came to us from anyone that we captured. My unit was out one day and we were ambushed. and luckily none of us were wounded, but we were able to take a prisoner of war who we put on a helicopter and sent back to the headquarters where Ed was stationed. And I know that there were, in what we would call today, enhanced interrogation techniques going on. And it bothered Ed tremendously. And it bothered him so much that he tried to stop it. I think if Ed were with us today, he would be very concerned about the debate that goes on about the terrible torture that sometimes happens. That night, Ed and I talked about our wives. And we talked about the fact that the best thing about what's happening to us away from our families is that we get to visit them once in our one-year tour of duty. My wife Maxine and I had just returned from Hawaii. And I told Ed how, you know, it never supposed to rain in Hawaii. And I said it rained every day. But I don't remember it raining because it never rained indoors. And Ed was so excited about going to see his wife in Hawaii. And it was going to happen in 2 weeks after March 15th. And when I talked to young Ed on FaceTime not too long ago, Ed told me that when the green car drove up to tell about the casualty in their family, that Ed's wife, Ann, thought it was the travel agent bringing the tickets for Hawaii. So now I have this opportunity to bring Ed back, to make Ed alive again for this family. It's so hard to imagine that a stranger like me knows more about Ed than the kids. And I'm ready to do that. And for me, that family represents all of these families that have lost loved ones in war that we never think about. We think of the individuals themselves, but it's the families that pay such a tremendous price when they send their loved ones off to war. And so for me, I want to just tell you one of the last communications that I had from young Ed. He says, a family of 5 have grown to a family of 26, including mom, kids, and grandkids. Dad would be pleased with what and how we have done in our lives. That's the family of Donna, Patty, Karen, Ed, Michelle, and his lovely wife, Ann. So for that family, and for my very good friend, Ed, I salute you. Thank you very much.